Hi, my friends, and welcome to this week's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you are here. Father Anthony Sciarappa joined me today as we talked about lore. Lore, lore in video games, lore in our faith, all the lore that you could possibly need. It's just been on my mind a lot, and we have a fun conversation, and I think Father Anthony left this episode with a worse feelings about me. So we had a great time, don't get me wrong, but I think he probably thinks I'm a worse person than he did 1 hour ago when we started recording this. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the conversation. It should be a fun and wild ride through some of the topics of this Advent season. Speaking of the season that we are in, Giving Tuesday just happened, and we're in this season of year-end giving. If you would like to give a year-end gift for the Catholic to support our work here this year and help launch us into the next year, and it'll help on your old tax return, fortecatholic.com/donate. Our monthly donors are the bread and butter of what we do, our backbone, how we continue to be able to do this work. But our one-time donors, especially at this time of the year, really help. Things start to slow down a little bit for us work-wise. So if you would like to give a year-end gift, you can do so, fortecatholic.com/donate. Please enjoy today's episode. Hello there, and welcome to Forte Catholic. I'm Taylor Schroll, and that's Father Anthony Sciarappa. Hello, priesty boy.
Hi. What's up, Taylor?
Not much. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing okay.
Yeah, what you looking at?
Nothing. Not some window I just closed. Now I'm totally focused on the podcast.
Yeah, I like you're usually like, you're a busy man. You're multitasking before the recording, and then I look down and your eyes are darting across. I'm like, is everything okay over there? Are you being...
Yes, no, we're good.
You look like it was like one of those, like we were recording your ransom video, like you were reading what I made you read. I promise that this... He promises to be fair. If you just send the money to the account, please do it.
Taylor is my friend, and I feel safe around him.
Oh, man. Here we are. We're in the throes of Advent. How's your Advent going?
Oh, so far, so good. 1 week down. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Just getting ready for... We got a bunch of confessions coming up. Got the school confessions, got our big parish confessions, also just our regular confessions. So I'm going to be hearing all sorts of sins. Actually, usually like there's only 10 different sins, but I'm going to be hearing them over and over again until Christmas.
I don't know why. For whatever reason, the way you worded it is like the school building is coming to confession, the church building is coming to confession. How would the church building's confessions differ from the church building's confessions?
The church building's confessions would be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm leaking again, even though you spent thousands and thousands of dollars to fix the roof. It'd be something along the lines, oh, I'm sorry that the pipe organ, I apologize for the pipe organ because it changes, it gets out of tune every time it gets cold or hot. It was stuff like that, yeah.
What about the school?
Oh, the school. I don't know about the school building. I was in there the other day. It was fine. So I think it'd be a very kind of simple confession. It was good.
Okay.
Oh, speaking of my church, I was just today, I got a call from my pastor. He's like, hey, you know how Notre Dame got fixed, or Notre Dame got fixed, and they're going to ring the bells, and we're all encouraged to ring our church bells at a certain time. Let's go up to the bell tower and record a video and invite people to come to mass in the bell tower. So I was in the bell tower for the first time. It was super cool.
Did you physically ring a bell?
No. I did not ring the bells in the bell tower because that would break my ears. The bells are gigantic. They're just huge. I'll send you a picture. But yeah, so I was up in the bell tower for the first time. They're named after saints. Our bells have names. I can't remember all of them, but one of them is St. Bernard's, obviously, because that's the name of the church. I recorded a little video with the pastor and got to see the whole city. I can see the top of the Pittsburgh skyscrapers from my place. Wow. It was super cool.
That's really neat. You would have learned so much and been prepared for that experience if you listened to this podcast. Because when I came to visit you last time, this past summer, I came to visit you, and then I went to this camp. And from that camp, I got brought to a monastery. And I got to go up and physically ring the bells in the monastery, but I had to wear like super duper duper headphones so that it didn't break my eardrums. It was very fun. I learned so much. You would have been prepared. You could have been like, look, parishioners, I know all this information about church growth. Did you know they have names? Did you know that they've been prayed for? You could have been so smart if you just listened to this podcast.
Yeah, no, that's why my pastor did most of the talking, and I was just like smiling.
He listened
and said, Please
to the
come
podcast.
to mass. yeah, he listens. He's a faithful listener to the podcast. Yeah.
So I have a theory going back to the sins of the buildings.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I know you have a weird parish name structure because of the combining. What is the physical name of the church that you live at?
That's St. Bernard Church.
I thought it was Holy Spirit something. What's that name?
Holy Spirit Parish was my last parish, and that consisted of, at the time, 7 different churches.
Okay, what's the other weird name for St. Bernard? What's the name of is there a name for the parish group?
Yes. So Our Lady of Grace and St. Bernard's are the 2 churches in St. Michael the Archangel Parish.
Okay. My theory is wrong. What's the name of the school building?
It's Ave Maria Academy.
Okay. I had a theory that I thought your school was named Saint something and the church wasn't, and I was like, the school building is a saint with no sins, and the church building is a heathen. But alas, my observation was incorrect. But if only I had listened to some other podcast that taught me about your church. So I have called you twice in the last month. Typically, you get me in 1 dose a month, but I've called you twice for very insignificant things, and both had the same topic. Do you remember what that topic was of those 2 phone calls?
Was it wrestling?
No.
You called me about something. I don't remember.
The Yakuza video games.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I called you out of the blue. I was like, something happened, and I did 5 minutes one time, and I called you maybe like a week after we recorded the last podcast. And then the last time, probably about a week ago or so, and I called you, and you're usually like, hey, what's up? Do you have a theological question? Do you have to talk about the show to schedule something? I was like, no, just want to tell you about this Japanese game. And by Japanese game, I both mean made in Japanese, about Japanese, and in Japanese. The whole game is great. The language of the game is Japanese, and both of us love these games. It's very silly.
Yes. Basically, the Yakuza or the Yakuza. Wait, how do they say it? They say Yakuza. Anyway, I don't know how they say it, but Japanese gangsters and a lot of silliness. And it's not only a video game; it's a video game that consists of thousands of other mini games. And it's just the biggest. It's like a Russian nesting doll of video games, except it's Japanese.
Yes, a Japanese nesting doll.
Yes, those exist. Sure, yeah.
It's my favorite thing about it. It's the fact that I played the game, and the main game. It's okay. You said gangsters, and you're right. The Yakuza, whatever. Like, they're essentially the mob, but Japanese. But this game, it's like there are some serious moments where it's like a The story beats are like what's those like shows that come on noon that we only watched when we were sick? What are those called? Soap operas?
Yeah, it's very soap opera.
It's a Japanese soap opera about the mob. So it's not as serious as it sounds. It's very silly. Like, it's one of the funnier games that I think I've played in a very long time. But also, like you said, these Russian nesting dolls. I played the main game. I have played this game for about 32 hours in the last few months, where like I haven't been playing many video games, but all of my hours have gone into this one video game. And I think I've gotten like 10 hours into the main story. And then another 10 hours playing this one mini game where you're like essentially running a store. And this other mini game where you like, it's essentially like a tower defense game inside the game. And then another like 3 hours just playing golf inside the game. Like I am spending so much time on this game, not playing this game. And it's so much fun. And like, I won't let my kids watch the like mob parts, but they can watch me play golf. They watch me play these video games. My little 7-year-old has been walking around singing this song in Japanese about Goro Majima, who is our favorite character in the game. He's essentially the Joker, but Japanese and in the mob. It's very funny, but my 7-year-old, we walk around like doing this like marching dance. He's the man, as you saw. Goro Majima Construction. It's so catchy and so silly, and I love it to death.
Yeah. It's also, I mean, I haven't played the one that you are playing right now, but the other ones, even though they're very silly, there have been moments that have like brought me to tears as well. There's like narrative like whiplash in the game as well. A lot of it's very silly, then some get like very intense and very sad and very dark other times too. So it's got everything. It's got everything. It's delightful.
It is soap opera-y in that way, in that it's like,
Yeah.
oh, my best friend's brother, who I thought died when I was a child, is married to my ex-girlfriend who just had a child, and it's actually my son. Like, like it's all these like,
exactly.
weird connections and stuff. It is very, very good. But the thing that I wanted to bring it up because I have a connection to this game about Advent. I promise. So
Okay. Wow. Did not see that coming. All right.
you've heard of this word called lore, yes? Lore.
Yes.
What
Yes,
are the favorites? Like, typically it's like IP, like intellectual property. The favorite, what's the word I'm looking for though? Like franchises. What do you think the
Sure.
franchises that you are the deepest into lore are? Like the top 3 or 4 things that you're like the deepest. Like I think for you, the WWE wrestling is probably one of the lores you're the deepest in.
that would be it. I mean, I've been playing Destiny 2 for a long time.
Uh-huh.
I've watched a lot of videos on that. I'm pretty good at that lore. I mean, I think every priest has a solid knowledge of some Tolkien lore. What else? Kind of like fandom stuff am I like into?
Dungeons and Dragons. I know you play. Are you deep into that
Dungeons
lore?
and Dragons, yeah. So I know some of that. Yeah, I know a little bit of that. Yeah, so I guess those things. Yakuza, I've got I got a lot of Yakuza lore in there.
It's funny because it is like how I tend to deal with lore. It's like I have been probably the lore that I've been the deepest in for the longest time is Star Wars. Like I've been into Star Wars since I was a little kid. I love the lore. I love all these like connecting stories. Like, everybody always bashes on the movies that, 4 is 1 and 1 is 5. Like it's just, it's all very confusing.
Yeah.
But I love that kind of stuff because it's like making everything fit together in the timeline. It's like, oh, who could make a cameo? Who's even alive at this point? Like all this kind of stuff. It's like, talk about bringing to tears. It's like when this character shows, like I watched this character die and literally wept when they died. And now I'm watching 5 years later a prequel where they show up as a child and I'm weeping again because I know how they died. Like it's just like diving into that lore and like learning new things. And how we learn new things in Star Wars is there are new books. I just finished a book on Count Dooku. You know who Count Dooku is?
Yeah.
The guy played by Christopher Lee, who I guess I accidentally named my son after.
Yeah. Oh, good job. Yes. I hope things turn out better for your son. Yeah.
Why is that? Because he died at 90? That seems pretty good.
Yeah, but he got his head chopped off, didn't he?
Oh, for Count Dooku. I was like, Christopher Lee seems great.
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah.
Yes, I hope my son's life turns out better than Count
seems to have lived a very full life.
I was like, I'm pretty sure he was Catholic
son.
or some kind of believer or something.
I hope your son isn't executed by Anakin Skywalker.
Yes, I am with you now. We are so. But essentially in the movies, he's portrayed as like just a bad guy. But like in this, and we as the viewers get to watch the tragic fall of Anakin Skywalker, right? And Anakin ends up killing him, and that's actually his fall is killing Count Dooku. All this stuff, right? But like, there's this TV show that came out a couple of years ago, and this book that came out a while ago, but I just read it a couple months ago, that like has me deep in the lore where like essentially his fall to the dark side mirrors Anakin's fall to the dark side, which is essentially, let's see if this sounds familiar to you. He was doing everything correctly and doing everything in a good way, and then his institution kept doing the opposite and not doing the thing that was being led by the spirit, the Force, and then they got disgruntled and left, not because that they disagreed with the teachings, but that people in the institution rubbed them the wrong way. Does that sound similar to, why would that connect?
No. That seems really tragic. Why would people in a very noble institution let you down over and over and over again?
Yeah.
And not have any like consequences for those sort of things? I can't imagine that ever happening in real life. That's why it's fiction. They make stuff up that's completely unrelatable.
You're right. I forgot. No. I knew it connected with me for some reason, but you're right. It really shouldn't.
Yeah.
It really shouldn't.
Yeah.
So, but the stuff like that, I love like diving into lore. Star Wars is probably the longest one, but even with Star Wars, I'll finish a show, and a lot of times I'll even rewatch a show. Like I rewatched Star Wars Rebels last year, wept. It's my favorite story in anything ever. It's just the best, but I don't rewatch stuff a lot. I really don't. Like, I don't like rewatching things. I want to learn new things and have new connections made and all these things, right? So sometimes I even get bored of Star Wars. So then I move on to something else. I dove really into The Witcher a few years ago
Oh,
and really got into that lore. And then I kind of died off. And then Dune is kind of the new one. The Dune books. And I read the books as the movies were coming out. I've read 2 of the books. I watched 2 of the movies. Now I'm watching this new TV show. It's very good. It's a prequel. I'm really diving into the lore of Dune. And a lot of times it's fascinating to me when things like Yakuza or Dune or Star Wars, they reference belief or faith and these sorts of things. And it's exciting for me to see these connections. And then I've sat in church the last few weeks at Mass. It might be one of the most bored, driest. I'm so bored. I am so tired of the lore of Catholicism and Christianity because I know it. I've heard these stories before. There's no new stories. There's nothing new that I'm learning. Like, I'm pretty knowledgeable in this stuff. The lore is boring. I want to go learn more about Dude. I want to go learn more about Game of Thrones. Like, there's new stuff being written. There's new stories. And every time they read this story, I'm like, yeah, this would be like watching the Empire Strikes Back over and over again. Great story. Maybe the best movie ever made. Like, incredible story. But I've watched it a bunch, and that's how I feel about, I don't know, the Gospels and Paul's writings and the Old Testament. I'm bored with the lore. I'm bored.
You want me to fix it for you? Is that what you're bringing?
Yeah. I don't know. This is my admission. This is my admission, and now we're going to talk about it. I don't know if you can fix it, but I would like to discuss it at the least.
Yes, no, it's great. I'm just thinking about the common phrase is something along the lines of like, you can always get more out of Scripture. It's the living word, and you're like, nope, boring lore,
boring lore. I've read it before. I've heard it, especially around this time of year.
Yeah.
Like, usually Advent's really good for me, man, because it's like, I love these stories. They're some of my favorites. It's like the best song. Oh, come man.
Yeah.
So good. And I'm just like, even that, the first Sunday of Advent, I complained on here for the last 2 years that my parish, it's not liturgically correct to play O Come Emmanuel the first 2 weeks. We have to wait for the O Antiphon. Shut up! Stop it! Stop it! It's the only Advent song. Play it. We'll all sing it. We'll all enjoy it. It'll all be beautiful. So I've been complaining publicly for 2 years. They finally listened to me. I upset someone, and they're now playing the song. But here's what happened, priest. On the first Sunday of Advent, I'm so happy. Like, the happiness just washing over me as O Come Emmanuel plays the first verse, then the second verse. Right around the second verse, the priest is ending at the altar. Yeah. And then they play it all the way through, verse, chorus, no vocals, 2 full times, 4 minutes of just piano. And I'm like, what are we doing?
That makes no sense. Why would they do that?
So, like, they're just like, hey, you like this lore? Let's shove it down your ear holes.
Yeah, that's what you get. That's what you get. That's why you shouldn't complain about stuff, because it can always get worse.
Yeah, correct.
So, speaking about like boring lore and stuff, like this is one of the things that like I take as a challenge to me as a priest, because when sometimes I'm looking at the scripture for this coming Sunday, and I look at it the first time and I roll my eyes and go, this again, or like, I can't believe it. Like, what the heck am I gonna do? And that's when I'm like, okay, if I feel this way, then everyone feels this way. So that's when I have to bust out some of my other commentaries, look at what the church father says. There's got to be something there. And for those, when I do that, there usually is something, a new perspective or a different emphasis or a backstory or something in the Old Testament that connects in a way they didn't realize it, or it's there. You just have to put more work into it. And if your preachers aren't doing that, then it's going to be kind of lame. And don't get me wrong. Sometimes homilies are going to be kind of lame, and you just got to be reminded of the stuff that, like, I'm going to keep telling people not to sin. That might be boring and repetitive, but you keep doing it, so I have to keep telling you to stop. So there's some of that, But yeah, it's you have to do extra work sometimes to refresh the stories, because the stories can be the same, but you can pull deeper meaning from them if you work at it, I think.
All right, what kind of work do I need to do then? You know me pretty well. Yeah, like I've
Yeah.
heard the story. I can write a homily. Like what kind of work are you talking about here? Make it less abstract for old fatty
Yeah,
over here.
I mean, for me, like I needed something like actually like really fresh. I actually go back to like the church fathers because they sometimes just say crazy stuff that I
I
can't
love
use
how
in the
you said,
homily.
"I want something fresh. Let's get something 1,600 years old."
Yeah, exactly. No, seriously though, that's what it is because we don't preach like they used to preach. We don't do this stuff, and some of the stuff is a little bit crazy. Like they get really into numbers and names and stuff that maybe I can't use, but at least it's interesting to me. Thomas Aquinas has a book where he just like takes the scripture and just takes like whatever any church father said about it, and he just like copies and pastes. He basically just compiled this sort of thing, which must have been really hard to do before the internet. And I'll go through that, or I'll pick up a commentary that I've never read before, or something like that, and I'll get like stuff that I haven't read before. So a lot of times, just going back because we just preach very differently now than how the first Christians preached, and so sometimes getting their perspective is helpful, refreshing.
Yeah, I think you're probably onto something with the like. I think I need some intellectual stimulation when it comes to my faith. I don't think there's been
Yeah,
much recently, and
yeah.
it's not coming to me in the ways that maybe it could or should or has in the past. So it's on me, and I guess I got to find some old dusty book and start reading. Because honestly, that's what I do in video games. Like whenever I'm playing the main story, like we were just talking about Yakuza. It's like the main story is great. It's the beautiful part. It's the story of sacrifice and family. It's like that's the scriptures. Like we got that right. Like, but like I mentioned, I'm not really playing the main story all that much. I'm doing all the side quests, and some of the side quests are great. Like the one where I'm running a business, very fun. I'm learning all kinds of things. There are some called fetch quests where it's just like go grab this, bring it over here. And that's what a lot of faith feels like. It's like living out your faith a lot of times feels like a fetch quest. Hey, go over there and don't sin, and then come back and hopefully you haven't sinned again. Or hey, you did sin, go fetch a confession and then come back home. And you can, like that's kind of what a lot of the day in and day grind kind of feels like. But there are things like even in the Yakuza game where it's like I will go and I'll have to like find a book or find a video and watch that video or read that book, and it like teaches me something new. So I think there's even a connection there of like I need to probably find a book to read. The last like Christian book I read was this summer, and it was a C.S. Lewis book, and it was intellectually stimulating in my faith. And so you're probably right. I think you solved it. Accidentally.
Yeah, I can give an example. I mean, it happened to me because I had never, maybe you've heard this. I have not heard this before, but the different interpretation of the reason why Saint Joseph wants to quietly divorce Mary. The kind of regular interpretation you hear most of the time is that he was like, "Oh no, Mary is with child, not with me. She's done a bad thing. I know what the law is, but I don't want her to be stoned to death, so I'm going to quietly divorce her because I'm a good guy." Okay, that's kind of number one. There's a lot to learn from that, right? Sure. But a lot of like the early church fathers, an interpretation that was pretty common around the time was like, that's not why he wanted to divorce her at all. Joseph, he's a good guy. Mary, she's a good girl. He would have believed her. He would have believed her when he talked to her. And so his reason for divorcing her, wanting to divorce her quietly, is like, there's no way I am good enough to be the foster father to this child. I am so unworthy. And this is so over my head. This is so insane that I need to just step away from this. It was kind of a false humility in a certain sense on Joseph's part, and realizing that, no, it's not your job to be the best person ever. It's your job to follow God's will. And he's chosen you for this thing. And no, you're not perfect, but that's what God is calling you to do. And he's going to provide even for your mistakes in being the foster father. And so that's the story. When the angel comes to him in a dream, it's to encourage him. Like, this is what God has chosen to do. So don't run away from it, even if it seems over your head. And the first time I heard that, I was like, oh, that's a really cool thing. I can preach on that for a few years before I get bored of that one too. So like stuff like that, you'll find stuff like that if you look for it.
You also might have just solved another problem that I thought we solved a month ago. I really thought we solved the problem a month ago.
Yeah.
This is, speaking of lore, this is starting to become deep lore here on Forte Catholic. You have to have listened for the last couple of months to understand what I'm about to say. I'm just going to say it and move on. But I thought I got over my issues about burying St. Joseph upside down in my yard during our recording last time. And I was all ready to go bury him upside down in my yard. Again, this sounds very weird if you haven't listened to the last couple months. It's Christmas break. Go listen to the last few months of the episodes. I still haven't done it. I'm going to do it today. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the statue, remember when you tried to divorce the Virgin Mary, and then shove him into the ground. That's what I'm going to do.
Wow, you really, that's your character arc with St. Joseph has been fascinating.
It makes me feel bad. I still kind of felt bad burying him, but I forgot that he tried to divorce, I don't know, the holiest woman ever. You doofus. I'm going to go bury you in my yard now. Okay.
There you go.
That's the lore. I didn't know we were going to get into our own lore, but we did.
Yes.
I've been dealing with this boredom with the lore of Christianity for a while now, and I think your solution is probably more proper, but I have had a solution that has tricked my brain into, let's say I've been dealing with this for about 4 weekend masses, right?
Sure.
3 of them I was very, very bored, and just like, I know, I've heard this before, right? But the 4th week, which was this past Sunday, I was sitting in church, and I ended up having a very good experience, both in Mass. I feel like I was in a better mood in Mass. I wasn't as grumpy.
Nice.
I feel like I had a good experience. I prayed for a good portion of the Mass. Like it was about as good as I can do in Mass. And here's what I did to trick my brain.
Okay.
Whenever I'm learning about the lore, especially in a video game, you know, there's some actions that I can take. Some of it's passive. You're just going to hear the story as it comes to you. Some of it's active. You have to do some things and push some buttons and, accomplish some things in the story. Okay, great. What I started doing is, like I mentioned earlier, I've become like fascinated with like religion or belief in a god in any universe, like even in universes that have multiple gods or whatever, right? Whatever, right?
Yeah.
Whatever the situation is, whether it's one god or multiple gods, I'm fascinated with how those people interact with their god. And a lot of times in a video game, if you go into a church or if you go into, their holy place, you can sit there and you hit a button to meditate or pray or whatever the action is, and you'll get some kind of buff on your character. Like you'll either heal, or your health will be improved for the next 30 minutes, or you get a tome and that gives you plus 20 strength. So this past Sunday at Mass, because I was bored with the lore, I was like, let's just make it lore. Let's just dive in. So as I was praying, I'm like, I'm getting plus 2 on grace. I'm getting plus 5 on patience. I'm getting a tome that is it's like a potion that I'm gonna get, that whenever I get angry later this week, this is gonna be a peace potion that I'm praying about now. Like I just started being like, look, if it's bored and I like how these other stories are being told, let's just make it like those other stories. So I was playing this game inside of my head, and it worked. I can't recommend it to anybody else because I don't know if anybody has the specific type of broken that I am, but I just want to tell you that it worked.
That you decided to gamify the masses.
Yeah,
basically what you're telling.
In my brain, didn't tell anybody till just now, but it worked. I was more engaged. I was praying. Every time I prayed, I was like, yeah, this is great. And like, a lot of times in games when people go to these holy places, it's because something bad's going on in their life or something stressful or whatever. And they go in and they come out all refreshed, and it worked.
I also am not going to recommend what you've done.
Okay.
But I thank you for sharing your experience honestly.
You're welcome.
How about that?
You're very welcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's it.
That's it's just I very often tell people not to treat the spiritual life like a video game because that leads to problems. So I don't know what to do with the fact that it seems to have borne good fruits, at least in the short term. So I am going to be agnostic about this practice for a moment. That's all I can do.
Well, you're agnostic about the practice, and I was almost agnostic for a little while there. So it's working.
Well, there you go. So
I like that your father. And all I want you to do is ask me, "Are you winning, son?" at Mass, and I will look at you and say yes, and then I'll move on with my day.
That's how I can start my holiday. That's how I should start confession. Are you winning, son?
Are you winning,
Father.
son?
Forgive me for I have sinned.
No, Dad. I'm sorry that I didn't. So another thing that I saw that I think both helped me. It's one of those weird things that it helped me because it hurt me.
Mm-hmm.
It was this post on the old Instagram by this Abiding Together podcast. You've heard of these lovely ladies, yes?
Yes, I have heard of them.
There's a sister and some other ladies, some lay ladies, ladies in the jets. Woo, 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 woo. Okay, they posted this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It was on Instagram in November 13th, and it was a post about hope. And November 13th isn't Advent, but I've been thinking about this, and it keeps coming up in Advent because Advent is the season of hope and waiting, right? Here's what it's one of those little things where it's like you keep swiping and it's different. It's the same picture, but it's just Jesus on a cross, but it's like different text, right?
Okay.
So here's what it says: you can't have hope if you don't have secure attachment. Now they run in circles where like none of these ladies are professional counselors, but one of the ladies' husbands is a professional counselor, and Sister Miriam James Heidland does work like healing work with two of these professional counselors. So like, are you familiar with that like secure attachment like verbiage that's like popular in like the mental health circles right now?
Not really. No.
Okay. So the first sentence is you can't have hope if you don't have secure attachment. Since you hadn't heard of it, let's just keep moving, right? But you can't have hope if you don't have secure attachment. If we are securely attached to the Trinity, then we can hope. So if we're securely attached to the Trinity, then we can hope. So attached to the Trinity is just like I'm in a relationship with the Trinity. I'm in tough times. I am, holding on to the Trinity, that sort of thing. So going back to the previous slide, if we're securely attached to the Trinity, then we can have hope. You can't have hope if you're not securely attached to the Trinity. And I was like, okay, that might be my issue. I think the times, I've mentioned over and over again every year when this hope and this Advent comes up, hope is the, faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love, and the one Taylor doesn't have is hope. Like that's what the Bible says.
Yeah.
The next one. Where is my indifference not allowing me to be securely attached in the arms of the Father? Where is my indifference allowing me to be securely where is my indifference not allowing me to be securely attached in the arms of the Father? Did that punch you in the heart like it did for me?
No.
Oh,
but I can see the
why
it would.
Indifference isn't an issue in your faith.
Not currently. I mean, it's not like it's never been that.
I don't know who you are. I'm glad things are going so swimmingly for you.
Indifference. I got a lot of problems. Indifference isn't one of them.
Got 99 problems and indifference ain't one. Hit me. Okay.
Yeah.
I shared this, and apparently a bunch of people are dealing with this, so I made some assumptions.
Yeah.
The next one. Where do I believe that Jesus is indifferent to me? Does that one do anything for you?
Yeah, that one did some stuff for me. Oh, yeah.
What's going on over there, buddy?
Yeah, that's not for show. That's not for the show.
Okay. Next question. Do I trust? Do I believe?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, yes.
I
wish I did a better job of those two things.
I think I believe pretty well. I don't know about that trust thing.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of times Sunday, I'm like, Lord, I trust you to take a hold of this situation. And then it's not done by Monday afternoon. I'm like, fine, I'll do it. I'll do it myself. And I feel like Thanos, So I think I believe pretty well, but I'm like, I'm not trusting. Do I have the security to say, I don't know what he's doing, but I know who he is?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is a good one.
I like that one a lot.
So I think what this is showing me is that a lot of my struggle with hope is two of those things, where it's like, I'll hope until it doesn't happen quickly enough, and then I'll try to do it myself, and then I get frustrated. Like, why didn't you do it? He's like, I was going to do it Tuesday. You gave me 24 hours.
Yeah.
I need 48. But I think a lot of times when I'm lacking hope, it's because I don't have this secure attachment to the Trinity. I think I'm drifting from the Trinity, and that my hope probably drifts around about that same at that same terminal velocity as me dropping from the Trinity. You accidentally fixed my other problem earlier about gamifying church.
Yeah.
What do you got to say about hope here in this Advent season?
Yeah. I mean, one of the reasons why we hope is because we have a reason to hope, and this is a difficult thing. So, like, when we look at our problems, our difficulties, either personal or the ones out in the world, and we can't see a solution to it, we begin to doubt that there is a solution to it, and so we lose hope. We've forgotten that God has already given us the solution in the cross, and that it will be fully completed at the end of time. Another thing that we do is that we see a problem and we have an idea of how to fix it. And we're so sure that's the only way to fix it that when God doesn't fix it that way and in our timeline, we assume he's not listening. And those are both of the things that dampen our hope and stop us from praying constantly. That's when we stop asking. That's when we get bitter. That's when we get resentful. And I think the solution to that is that last little bit. Do I trust? It was something along the lines of like, do I know who he is, even if I don't know what he's doing, or something along those lines? And that's the point. Like, okay, I don't know what's going on. One of the more difficult things is like, I just don't know what's happening, and I don't have control over it. And I don't know when God is going to fix it, or I don't know when it's going to be healed. But I trust in the one who is the healer. And that's a really good prayer. That's a really good meditation. To kind of enter into this unknowingness, being unsure. Sometimes trying to be sure is what kills our hope. But remembering who he is what revives our hope. Because we have every reason to hope because of who God is and who he's shown himself to be.
Yeah, a lot of times whenever we're talking about our relationship with the Father, sometimes we put it in the context of like how I talk to my kids. Like, I'm the father of these kids, right? But I think more on my mind right now because I just saw, last night I sat at my son's basketball game with a few of my former athletes who were they graduated 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago. Yeah. And they're doing very well, right? And I remember times, I coached them for 4 years. There were times at practice where I, as the leader, the coach, the leader of the team, it's like, there are times where I can say, we are going to do this. And there are some times where they can say like, hey, why are we doing this? Or what's the point of doing this? Why aren't we doing this instead or whatever? Yeah. And there are times where I can explain it. And a lot of times when I explain it, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Mm-hmm. There are other times because of time or because of just the mood I'm in or whatever, I'm just like, just do it. Yeah. I'm telling you to do it. Just do it, right? And a lot of times they get frustrated because teenagers, I don't want to do it. Yeah. Why wouldn't you just tell me? I'm like, we're doing it. First of all, because I said you're going to do that's the main thing, right? Yeah. And then a lot of times it takes till the end of a season or even having graduated a couple of years and being like you were pretty successful when you were listening to my coaching. We accomplished some really good things together. You being the great athlete and your hard work and me leading you and guiding you through that. We accomplished some really cool things together. Mm-hmm. And there were times where you could say, "What, Taylor, why are we doing this?" And I would explain it to you. And you were great and happy and it helped. There were other times where I was just like, just do what what you're supposed to do. Just do it. And you did it those times too. And you were grumbly and mad at the guy in charge and all this kind of stuff. And it's just like, ultimately, was it good for you? Did I have your best interest in my mind, in my heart, in my head? Yes, I did. And they all know that now. All of my former athletes are like, it was pretty good. Even when I complained and all this stuff, it was pretty funny. There was one last night he was talking about, I used to complain all this stuff too. And now his little brother's going to start running for me this year for the first time. And he's all excited for me to treat him like I treated him. And he's like, you hated it, but it's just kind of this funny thing. So I think there is a lot of that in the, there are some times where God, why is this happening? And it'll come to you in prayer or somebody, a kind word from somebody else. It'll come. There are other times where it will not. And yet, does he still have your best interest in heart? Yes, he does. He absolutely does.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. The last thing on this lore thing, the last connection to our Advent and video games and connection.
Yeah.
One of the things like what you ended up suggesting was me taking an action. Mm-hmm. What your suggestion was go read the Fathers. Go do something that is intellectually stimulating that'll help your faith, right? I feel like I've been doing a lot of things in my life are going very well that weren't going well previously. We had an influx of money come in because I got booked for a bunch of events. I've been praying for that and hoping for that and desiring that for forever, both because I love doing the events. I feel like God works through me through my gifts. And also it helps me continue to live very, very good things on both. It's very good. My health is going a lot better. I think a lot of that is kind of because I'm doing an action, but it is passive actions. I am working out a little bit, but I'm not working out a ton, but I'm going to my recovery cryo place every day. I'm either doing the sauna or cryotherapy or the red light every single day. So it's an action that I'm going, but it's a passive when I'm in there. Right. Yeah. And I'm losing weight. I'm feeling better. I'm doing better. That's going well. And typically if I'm taking care of my body, my spiritual life goes up. If I'm not, it goes down. Just because it's all tied together. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right now, it just happens to not be. Physically, I'm actually doing pretty well, but spiritually, it's just kind of dry and dead. But there is something to taking an extra action. Because when I'm reading the lore about Dune, like there's a show right now, like the Dune movies and main books happen 10,000 years before this prequel. 10,000 years is a very long time. Usually prequels are like 100, 200. 10,000 years. Like, think about where our society was today. 10,000 years.
It's
very different place. But the through line through all of Dune is whoever controls the spice trade on Arrakis has all the power, has all the legacy, has all the money, has all the... And so I read about all this stuff in Dune, and I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? I can't control the spice trace on Arrakis. One, because it's not real, and two, if it was, I don't have the power or the military to take over the spice trade on Arrakis. I cannot do anything about it. But when I go to the Catholic Mass, Jesus is like, hey, if you want to have a great life, don't control the spice trade on Arrakis. Control your passions. Control your thoughts. Do something about it. Like, there are actions that I have not taken in response to learning the lore of Christianity, and that's the whole freaking point. Intellectual stimulation is awesome and should help with the actions. But I can take no actions for learning the lore of Harry Potter. There's nothing from Harry Potter that, there are lessons I can learn. There's lessons of sacrifice. Sure. But I learn when Wingardium Leviosa, my chair is not currently floating. But there are actions that I can take from learning this boring lore at church that will actually improve my life.
I'm just saying, if there's any priest listening, and if you ever start your homily with, if you want to change something, don't control the spice trade on Arrakis, control your passions, I will find you and I will end you. So just throwing that out there. Don't do that. But that was amazing.
For the love, please. Any priest listening has permission to steal anything I say and put it into a homily. Please.
That's true. Yeah, because those things are, I mean, they're nice distractions. They can help with leisure. Sometimes you can learn lessons for it. But when we're at the Mass, we're in the story. We're there. That's the belief. We're a part of it. The very Catholic thing about Catholicism is that Jesus gives us a real role in his saving action. And even though we're not the ones doing the saving, we get to participate in it. Like, that's one of the most Catholic things, is that, like, Lord's like, yeah, the story continues and you're a part of it. And so you can either take it up or you can let it go. And so even something as simple as going to Mass, you're a part of that story now. Yeah, so that's good. And you get experience points every time you go to Mass. So
I really do. I am such a high-level Mass goer at this point. It's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
It's really unbelievable. Speaking of Mass going, I saw you talking the other day about how you sat in a pew the other day, and it was a terrible experience.
Terrible.
I want some context for this. What's going on over there?
So on Tuesdays, I expose the Blessed Sacrament in our main church for adoration. And adoration goes from like 4 until like 9. And I'm the one who exposes it at 4 o'clock on Tuesdays. And I had some time. And I was like, I'll sit down with Jesus for a little bit. And then I was like, this is terrible. Jesus, I'm going back to my comfy chapel where I've got seats with cushions. You people do this every Sunday? Oh, I had a newfound respect.
Yeah, Catholic people spending time with Jesus. Ugh.
Oh, it's just
gross.
But with those pews, this is so uncomfortable. I did not like it at all.
It's very funny how you worded it.
Yeah.
Here, let's spend some time with Jesus. Ugh.
Yeah.
Y'all do this every week?
Exactly.
What is wrong with you?
I get cushion seats. Yeah, I don't know why.
If you're a Catholic priest and you're giving a homily and you start it by saying, you want to spend time with the Lord, you gross, don't start your homily that way.
Actually, just leave. Just don't start any homily ever again. Yeah. But why don't you all bring pillows to Mass? I mean, it's just, that was terrible. I hated it. I was there for like 2 minutes.
I do bring pillows. They're named Felicity, Magdalene, and Chris.
Yeah. I was like, this is spending an hour in this pew? You do this all the time? Ooh, gross.
It's real bad.
Yeah.
Real bad. Okay, good. Well, I'm glad you think it sucks being a layperson.
I think it does. I think it's the worst.
Last little thing here. This is just a note that I had in mass the other day when I was learning lore about old King Herod. He's a big figure here in this Christmas Advent season,
He
Christmas
is.
season. And all I wrote was, it's hilarious when people think they can outwit God.
Yeah.
That's the premise. So, good old King Herod, he hears this story about this prophecy about this baby that's going to be born and be king. He's like, "No, I'm king. I don't want that." So he's like, "Okay, the baby's going to be born very soon. All right, let's kill all the babies for 2 years." I'm like, "Boy, first of all, that's like, I'm all for like making sure that you do your work correctly. Like every time I edit a podcast, I edit it through, and at the end I zoom out and I go and I like check spots to make sure that it's good. I'm not checking work I did 2 years ago. Like it's just way too much oversight and checking on your work. First of all, he overdid it, right? But the fact that he heard this prophecy is like, God Almighty, the creator of heaven and earth, is going to have a baby. And he's like, and he just accepts that premise. Like, okay, this has never happened before. And he's like, I accept that premise, but what I can't accept is for him to live after this birth. So let's just kill all these babies. Like he could outwit God. It's honestly one of the craziest stories that, speaking of lore, I've heard over and over again.
Yeah.
I heard this story and I was like, that's insane. Where he's like, all right, this prophecy that's been around for thousands of years, it's finally upon us. I know how to fix it. I'm going to put this into my own hands. And God's just like, yeah, well, just go to Egypt. It's fine.
Yeah. That's why never believe your own hype. Never believe your own hype. It never goes well for you. When you're the so-called king of Jerusalem, even though the Romans still rule over you, you can start to believe your own hype and that you can do anything. No, you can't.
No, you can't. All right. Well, that's all that I have.
Do you want to hear a cool story?
Sure. I'd love to.
Yeah, so I think I can share this. Because it's anonymous enough. But the other day I got a call to the hospital.
Fickleus Sciarappa, who's not my brother.
Yeah, no. A lot of times when I go to the hospital to anoint people, a lot of times they're either unresponsive or they're asleep. Sometimes when they're awake, I have a little chat with them. But every once in a while, you have this like really profound talk with somebody. And this guy was just getting a surgery the next day. And I have no idea what his medical condition was, older guy. And he described himself as a hardline Catholic, which I'm unaware of that religious order, but it sounds intense. Mm-hmm. And so like, okay, cool, whatever. And he's telling me about his life. And then he gets like real serious. Because we had just finished, I anointed him, we prayed the Our Father together. And he says, when he was growing up, his father left him when he was a year old, left his family, his biological father. And growing up, even though he loved all the Catholic stuff, he always felt uncomfortable with saying the Our Father. He just didn't get it. Like, why is a father a good thing, you know? But he stayed faithful and everything. And as he grew, he had to travel a lot for his job. And he would see in his life, sometimes things worked out, or sometimes when he was in trouble, something was taken care of. And he saw that as God's providence. He's like, oh, that's what it means to have a father, someone who takes care of you. And he looks at me and he says, do you think it's okay to not just say our Father, but to say my Father who art in heaven? And I looked at him and I said, well, if you do that with a group of people, they're going to give you funny looks. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can say my father because he is your father specifically. And this, like, I don't know, 80-year-old guy says you have no idea how much comfort that brings me. And I was just like, whoa. Like, I was like in the midst of this very sort of profound thing that happened. And we just chatted a little bit more. And then I said, hey, you're always welcome to come back because he goes to a different church. But like, you're always welcome to come back to my parish, if you want to. He goes, yeah, but do you still play that really loud organ? I was like, yeah, maybe just go to a different mass. Just go to mass. You don't want to come to our church. And we still play the organ very loudly. But it's just like, it was one of those moments where every once in a while, I can get very bored with ministry in a certain sense because it's just the same thing over and over again. And this was just going to be another routine anointing. And then God surprised me with new lore from a person I just met. And he gave me a glimpse into how God's been working in his life. And even at the very end of his life, I mean, hopefully he lives many more years, but like even that age, like God gave him something that changed his life. And that's why we have reason to hope.
My favorite thing, we talked about how people try to outwit God. I also think it's funny how we often jump through hoops to try to like fit into rules that don't exist that we think that he made. Like, do I really? Jesus taught me to say "Our Father."
Yeah.
So do I really have to say "Our Father"? And I love that you were just like, this guy asked, "Hey, priest, do you mind if I use correct grammar when I pray to God?" And you're like, "Sure." And that changed his life is insane. All he's doing is using correct grammar. Jesus taught a group of people to pray. And when you're in a group, you say "our." When you're by yourself, it's insane for me to by myself say, "Our Father." Like, he's like up there, like, who are you talking to? I didn't mean you had to say it verbatim. I meant, here's how you pray. These are the kinds of things that you do some praise, you do some asking, you don't have to use my syntax. Like, the syntax isn't the thing that brings salvation. It's just so funny that this guy, like, I get the real hold up with the dad issue. Like, that's a real thing that I know people deal with. But it's just so funny that he had to ask a priest permission to be like, when I pray to God, can I use proper grammar? And you're like, yes, my son. And it changed his whole world.
I mean, a few things. One, like, is to show you, like, just how we teach the faith differently than we did like 60, 70 years ago, you know? And there's a lot of wounds from like how I think it was taught. Yeah. But just like, am I allowed to do this thing? It's like, yeah, man. In fact, you should.
I don't think I'll ever say the Our Father by myself as an Our Father ever again.
I mean, you probably should,
because it's
say
very silly. Like, by myself, okay, me saying "our" is so dumb. I'm not a they them.
You know what? I got not. I mean, it's important to say "Our Father" as a reminder that we are one like human family, and God doesn't solely belong to you. But yes, in private prayer, Taylor, go for it. Say "My Father." I think that can be a beneficial spiritual practice. Just definitely don't do it in a group because people will give you funny looks.
Now I'm going through the whole thing. Why do I say "art"?
That's because that's how we translate it. That's how the Protestants translated it, basically, and that's what we do.
So silly.
It's very silly.
Hallowed be that. Like, whatever. I'm going to rewrite the whole thing now.
There you go. I'm looking forward to your...
I'll pray it while I scold St. Joseph as he goes head first.
Yeah, that sounds like a good plan. Rewrite the Our Father, yell at St. Joseph, bury him upside down. That is Catholic piety, my friend.
All right. Well, I think I'm going to have to go do a fetch quest to confession here pretty soon. All right. Well, this was fun. We got to talk about Yakuza and make the massive video game. This was great.
Great.
All right. Well, that's it for me. I'll be back next week. Usually Father Anthony would be back in a month, but we might be doing something for Christmas. We're going to sign off and talk about that. Yeah. Bye. See you soon. Love you. Thank you for watching and listening to today's episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure that you subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. Make sure you leave a comment and a like and hit the bell on YouTube and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. All that stuff really does make a difference. Every podcast you listen to says that, and you should believe them. It really does make a difference. Help a brother out in this season of love and hope. I hope that you will leave a review and subscribe and share this with a friend. You're the best. Love you. See you soon. Bye.